So, in this continuous part one, the book is taking us along in the process of socialization. That means how you adapt and get to become member of society, of the larger group. And in that case, they also want to talk about and mention several important aspects of groups and how they can contradict or complement each other and how they can stand in total asymmetrical relation and what comes out of that. And of course, they're gonna get around several topics on that conflict that is always in society between now not individual and group, but group and group, majority and minority, and groups with different affiliations and thoughts and ideas. And so we're gonna go deeper now into how this interaction is going to work between people that was mentioned earlier, that when we act, when we have activities, we go into a network of organized or non-organized ways of interaction with the surroundings and the people in it. And so new set of rules and dynamics and understandings appear, and they become traditions, they become rules around us, and those provide the easy way of going about with each other, because then we know what everyone is expected to do and not to do. And so they're going to step this up now and talk about how that unfolds when in the same society has different groups with different orientations and maybe have asymmetrical power to use that understanding in one way or another. And so, what is socialization? It's the process where you are formed to look like the identity that's wanted for you, where your inner needs can be suppressed, not necessarily suppressed, but they can be, and where your total chaotic and undisciplined freedom is put into order according to the expectations of those around you and the culture and its value. That's the way of being socialized. That means if you've been coming from a family where you are used to do things that's not acceptable in the new area you're coming to, can be the same country, you're gonna go through a new socialization process. If you have been working all your life with people who can drink and eat anytime they like and shout at each other during work, and you go to a company that does not allow these things, you're gonna go into a new kind of socialization. And so when we are socialized, we become those beings that live in society. Because before that, you live on your own and you want to live on your own. But because we meet and because we need to meet, maybe, we are a social animal, as it was said by the old philosophers. All this is, of course, my explanation in and out of the book's ideas and quotes. Not it's on my own account and not on the account of the book itself. But the basic idea here is that if you are gonna meet others, you're gonna have some expectations on how to meet and what to do, what not to do. There are limits. There are at any time some given rules, and if there aren't, you'll quickly find these rules. And the more people are meeting, the more these rules need to be explicit. So if you're just meeting one person in a desert, maybe you don't need to make a long set of rules and what can you say? The dependence of independence, the Declaration of Independence, and make the work to do the constitutional work with that guy in the desert. But if there is thousands of people meeting in the desert and they have all sort of tents and friends and a lot of stuff with them, slowly you will need to have someone to organize all that, and that becomes society. So, and you need to be socialized into that. You need to, when you are arriving here, like they say in the Old West, by reading the old comics of Lucky Luke and those, stranger, leave your gun in your pocket and so on and so on, or you will get out of here dead, and so on. So they have already the rules made. before you come to the place. And that's socialization. So we become able to live and act and have interaction in a group that's around us and in the nation that surrounds us. So in that group, you will ask yourself, who is deciding what or what not to do? It can be a religious source, it can be a source of powerful people giving you the ways, it can be some people with a special privilege. And this is why they're going to talk about meaning and privilege, because not everybody is equal in that society, and that's another aspect of it. When you come into a socialization process and become member of that network of interaction around you, there are somebody who are privileged to make the rules. Who are they and why are they chosen? And who chose them? And what kind of rules are they putting up around me? That's big questions that would arise by you understanding sociology and looking into it. So it's a kind of power that operates to make this self of yours adapt already from when you are a kid. It makes your intentions, expectations, and actions all in line with what these rules and norms and traditions are in society. So there are significant people, significant and privileged people. These significant people don't necessarily need to be privileged. They can be significant to you, like the teacher and the friend and the boss and someone who has a very special role to play in your life. These are significant others that affect your life directly, good or for the worse. But the privileged people are those who have more access to resources, whatever it is, material or symbolic resources, as we talked about in the earlier talk, and they can put their will through. Maybe it's a God-chosen family that becomes the king and the king's sons and daughters. Maybe it's a voted ruler, so it becomes the majority. Maybe it's the theocratic leader who is chosen by a kind of inspiration of God, or a group of people, of old men with white beards, and it can be the first lady behind the president, who is the most significant person because he has such a weak character that she has to step in all the time and show him the way. So there are people who have access to some material and symbolic resources that will be able to form those rules and laws in society. So when a large group of people, they migrate from one place to another and maybe take a ship over the seas and come to the promised land, and they have their culture and religion with them, they want to establish it and they want to spread it and maybe dominate with it. Or maybe they just want to tell you that this is how we do things here in this special town. And if you come here, want to live here, it's like this. So if you don't like it, you can go to the other place and do something else. And so the nation and the country as a whole becomes dependent on those significant people who can put their will through on how things should be. And so when we are in these environments, we are somehow also going to choose. Some things are chosen, but many times you have to choose. Do I agree more with this or that group? Would I like this town more or the other one? Do I like these values or do I more prefer the others? So it's called reference groups. You're going to have some reference groups in your life, and these can be the one and same group. It doesn't need to be many. Just where you are born, how you are raised, the school you have been in, the significant people around you, and you stay there the whole life, and this becomes your reference group for eternity until you die, and they will carry you away as well. But sometimes you can choose new reference groups, or maybe open your mind to see new aspects. That happens a lot in politics, where people can be of a certain ideas and then shift or change, or maybe come from an apolitical background and starts being active politically because they see that it is an important thing. And there are, as Irving Goffman says, two types of reference groups or people that we are actually surrounded by. The first one is the ones with a face. It's those who we meet and the others are those with no face. So that's the group we are part of without really being able to touch it. So if you are a woman, you are already part of a group based on your not ethnicity but your gender, and so you are part already of the gender called woman. If you do not define yourself as a woman, you become part of that group that is so much discussed these decades, the non-binary group. If you are a male, you are per se part of the groups of male. If you are a male who is white and married and comes from Europe and speaks English as a native language, you are already part of a certain type of group. If you've been a son of an Afro-American who came, or a Pakistani migrants, and so on, you are already per se part of that reference group. So these groups can have face and they can be faceless. So that's how it goes about when we want to understand what's going on. And so these reference groups can become significant, or we can make them significant. At the same time, we can also disobey them if we are raised to learn to use our individuality. But it is a part of us that we can at some time suddenly become aware. Many stories have been written on that people has been part of something and suddenly they get awake, and they got a wake-up call, or something in them telling them, listen, this is not what I am, this is not what I identify with, you are not significant for me anymore. And they leave. It can be their mom, their family, their school, their way of life, and they go a long or a short way to find another or a new way of life and rest in that and find happiness, and maybe it becomes a tragedy and they die, or they get what they want. So that the significant groups can change for us, and at one point we can maybe find one group very significant and later in life another group. That's why they say many young people are revolutionaries. Then when they start having responsibility, they become very liberal because they want the economy or something that brings them wealth. And in their what can you say, twilight lives, when they become older, many goes being conservative, and that's how things progress. So you start holding more and more onto the traditions and the known, and you want to adapt yourself and your family to those. And one thing they are mentioning here that's very important is that we can sometimes, without knowing it, being affected by significant groups and reference groups outside of ourselves. And they mention the role of stars and people who have gotten the focus out there in society. I think today we call it influencers as well on social media, and people who have a stronger voice than others because somebody has chosen to give them that microphone and let them talk more than others, or let them be in focus more than others. So there is a kind of a game going on who to become the significant with a voice and a power to affect you and to become the reference group of really many people. It can be a brand. I'm having the Pepsi there on the corner of my of my table there, and one is filled and one is empty, and they have been like this for years. So it's not because I'm gonna drink them. I just have them as a symbol, because I've been very much influenced by Pepsi since I was a kid. And my family, I was a cute little boy, and they wanted to put me into an advertisement where they were asked, well, could this kid of yours who's so cute come into an advertisement for Pepsi in Lebanon at that time. So we want to make it so he is standing where he is, somewhere, maybe on top of a car. They want to do something exciting, and then he sips of that Pepsi. I almost said whiskey. But sips of that Pepsi. And so I'm very influenced by that since I was a kid, and the mark and the picture of these flasks there, the glass, has stayed with me all my life, and I like them, and I love how they are formed. It's just a piece of art in my opinion, and have a lot of memories. So that's a culture, and that's a kind of significant thing in my life that I have kept. And so somebody may use the means and money to focus on this product instead of the other, and that becomes the widespread one. And sometimes you go through your whole life not knowing that there has been some other taste of this that you have never known, and it's just called something you never heard of, even though it's the same, or it's better, it tastes better. And that's how it goes with people being significant. And they mention very shortly the role of the mass media in our time, how they can make somebody more visible and give them the authority to speak. So today we can hear a certain type of persons speaking about even politics and running for politics, or helping people because they have hundreds of thousands of people attending their sermons, songs, concerts, whatever they are, watching them on TV. They become important because the people gives them that importance, and because somebody in the media and people who have this significance of power, have this privilege, of power, they can make them important. That's why many times you see people with privilege, they want to be photographed with people with influence, and they want to get them on their side, or let them speak on their behalf and say, I vote for this and that, I will stand with him, and I will come and visit. And they show you this relation. That's because they know these privileged people, that he or she is privileged, maybe by material means and by symbolic resources, but they have also to keep them going, and they have to stay on top. And then when somebody comes out who people like, and that he or she becomes an influencer and becomes a significant person for reference groups, maybe a lot of reference groups, everybody who likes music of that kind, everybody who like that kind of sports, everybody who like nature in that way. Oh, this guy is appealing to many people across the reference groups. So you see people from many kind of reference groups looking at this he or she person who is surrounding them with his or her attention. And so they tap into that. The privileged people tap into that to affect how society is going to be run, or to get the what can you say, the acceptance of keeping society running. So when you are socialized, it's a lifelong process that keeps going on, and it can shift and change. And there are somebody who is forcing this socialization on you. So it's very true to say that you are what your society have made you. At the same time, you cannot look away from that you have something in you that always is in a dialogue. It's always talking to the outside world. And that inside of you can become aware of your differences or equals with that outside world. And so by doing so, you always affirm or de-affirm your contact with that world around you. And so you can become a rebel, an outsider, someone who's really not ready to just conform to everything around him. But at the same time, it can also be someone who is very much understanding of the world around him, and just stays that way. And so by understanding this, I guess it becomes more clear that we are who somebody also made us to be who we are. And we are not just on a lonely island all the time, even though we have this island of loneliness and aloneness inside us. I have been speaking about that in a previous talks about the godly laughter and the existential psychology. But so we have also to always relate to where we are in life and what kind of privileges we have been given, or what can we take to become the privileged. And then we can see this activity of us as individuals, as groups, to maybe making a lobby and make an effect on policies, or maybe going with the stream or against it. We can a lot of things to change the status quo. Status quo means that you change how things are and who is deciding what. And that's what politics also is about, especially in democracies, is like you give space for different people to interact. And that's what Irving Goffman calls the space and social fields, the fields of social interaction. And they can be many. And some of them are functional, some of them are a kind of private. And so you are also between different kind of fields. One of them is a functional field, like when you go to the shop and buy groceries from the store. You do not want to have personal question asked when you are around there. You just want to be functional around other people, stand in line, make way for others, go to the counter, finish it off, and go home, or run around in there unnoticed and just looking at things. But at the same, when you are to a party or somebody around you who is celebrating, you are not that functional person in the same way. You are socializing. So you are there because of the people, not because of the cake and the food. Maybe you can say so. I'm just coming because of the cake and make joke of that. But you are actually primarily there because of what you identify. You identify with these people in some way. They are part of your reference groups. And that's why you attend. And that's why you are there when there is a celebration or a kind of a party that's going on where it relates to you. And so Erving Goffman has talked about this order of interaction. It's like spaces where people socially interact into fields that can work together or work against each other or can be separated. So your sphere of privacy is where you are intimate and you can open up for being the one you want to be from the inside, or maybe try to be. You can't do that in the supermarket where you are more functional. And at the same time, when you are socializing, the social sphere that you are going to for the interaction reasons. At the same time, you make a differentiation between people you have met and people you haven't met. And there is something in that also have occupied sociology, that basically humanity is just something you imagine. You hear about people living in some islands that are very beautiful or a crowded place and they are 1 billion and what does that mean to you? Nothing, because you do not meet them in the daily life. You hear about them and you know they have an effect on life and production and so on, but they doesn't really meet and that doesn't have that special effect on your life as your neighbor or your friends or the people you're going to meet at school or where you are working. And the traffic you're going to be surrounded by, that is something you're going to pay more attention to than those humans far away. And so distance makes things like blur more than closeness. So the more you are close in these interaction fields, the more you both have influence and can be influenced. And that's why we pay more attention to what's directly around us and surrounding us. And that's why it's very normal when we hear about a disaster far away that we can maybe become sad for a moment or two, and maybe not sad at all. But if we hear about our neighbor losing somebody or a fire in our neighborhood, that affects us a lot more because we know we are more attached to this reference group and this area more than the others. So the more the difference is from us, the more we like, they call it, typify our knowledge about the people, and that represents those ideas. It becomes a type. You look, oh, Africans, yeah, I know Africans, oh yeah. Then you have an imagination of what Africans is and how they are, how they eat, how they go. You don't really know, but you make a type. And oh, the Muslims, yeah, I know, yeah, those people, yeah. And you talk about the Chinese the same way, or maybe the Europeans if you are from other part of the world. And India, yeah, you already can smell it, because from that time you went into a shop with Indian people. And so you make a typification. You make them as a type, but not really the humans you are directly related to because they are far away. I guess it's very clear. At the same time, the people we are surrounded by and close to becomes more than a type. They become those individuals that stand out. So we can go into interaction with them one-on-one. And that's very significant, a very special, also in psychology, because that has a very special effect on us, because they have their inner world that reflects on the outside. You have your inner world, you're reflecting to the outside, and you are meeting in a social world where you both reflects and are reflected. And this social world has socialized you into it, and so you can marry or become good friends because of that group relation you are in. And that's why we find many people who marry from the same society or group or area or workplace or religious community, because they have a lot in common and they can relate and their references are the same as the group. And so they form their identity in that way that makes it understood. So we have our self-identity, they say, and we have the identity that's connected to the social identities that we meet in our life. So we are in the other. There is us and there are the others. There's me, there's the I, then there is me, then there is us, and then there is the others. And so us and the others is what they are really focusing on in this chapter, that interaction that is so exciting. Not only the interaction between one and one, but the interaction between you as part of a reference group, a society, somebody with special ideas and thoughts against those who differ from you. You can be a woman in a woman's society and you meet men, so they differ from you already there. You can be black and you meet people with white skin, and so on and so on. You can be from a privileged group who owns a lot of cars and you meet people who are using donkeys. And so it goes. So this is what they are circling around and trying to get into in this chapter by talking about how we relate to groups and that reference group we have. And then we go on talking about when we differ ourselves from others, what happens and how this group dynamic actually works. They're not going into depth into that, but they are giving some kind of insights. First of all, the distinction that is between us and them can be called the insiders, the in-group, and the outsiders, the out-group. And these two, like opposites, are bound together. You cannot have the in-group without some kind of out-group. And wherever we are in society, we are somehow in an in-group. When you walk in the street shopping and you meet 10 people sitting in the square eating ice cream, they are the in-group of the ice cream eaters, and you are the lonesome non-ice eater who's walking by. And so there's always the in-group and out-group. And sometimes they can go so wild that they become what they call antagonistic. That means they are really opposing each other, far, far away in understanding. And that's what happens when, like, a leader from the East, former Soviet Union, came to the United States, a very famous and important visit. I will advise anyone to find it, a Khrushchev's visit in the United States in the 50s, where President Eisenhower gave him a scenery route around the United States, and people were standing in line to see that enemy of the state and the guy who's going to nuke them. And he was there trying to charm them and all that, and got angry on their way, and very beautifully made a small documentary in Slice History. It's called When Khrushchev Came to the United States, or Khrushchev's Visit to the United States. And that gives you a picture of that antagonistic picture you can have between groups. It was like an alien coming into a total different way of life. He didn't understand how to deal with, and they are not really sure how to deal with him as a representative of everything that he has carried with him from there. And the same when the Americans went to China and had to open up the relations there, or something like that, or just an ordinary person going from one group, going to a very opposite type of group and trying to understand. And that's where we can get the peace, because when we try to understand, some bridges will be built, and if they hold, well, it becomes more than the bridge over more than the soldiers over the bridge Kwai. It becomes like a wide golden gate you can enter through. Well, here they mention Michel Foucault and Jacques Derrida, very important two figures with sociological studies behind them, talking about the self-identity related to us being in the groups. They're only mentioning a little bit of it, and they're just saying that these two, they say, we are always in that self-identity and social identity, um, and we can be part of something at all time. Those who are in and those who are out is always surrounding us. And on that ground, we start understanding that many times we have our own group in opposition to the foreign group, the out group. And so that foreign group and out group has to have some characteristic typifications. And that's what especially Pierre Bourdieu has been digging into and also Norbert Elias. And also Emile Durkheim has been trying to figure out in early stages of sociology as a science. It's the feeling of belonging somewhere and the feeling of connection. That's what defines us in those groups. We belong here. This is our group. Those are strangers. They do not belong. They are not the right ones. They do not have the right beliefs or colors or way of doing things. So they are the out. And we give ourselves the right in these groups, they say, and when we have these bonds that gives us power, we give ourselves right to dominate and to use our significant numbers or power to dominate. So those people sitting and eating ice in the square while I was walking by, and I felt outside, they have the power with that bond they have and the feeling of connection that I don't. I'm lacking it. And so it brings along a lot of benefits having such a group. They can help each other, protect each other, become powerful together. It's things I can't do. So if I want to take them on, all of them, and fight their ice cream group or maybe oppose it, I will be hugely outnumbered and I won't have the friends I need. So I need to go back to my group and get back at them because we like chocolates. We do not like ice cream. And that can be a silly difference I'm mentioning here. So that makes things more complicated when we are also getting benefits of the groups who are our own in opposition to the others and can use our power to define how things should be. And that's why they say here that a political party, a union, a government, a movement can be the extension of who you are, gaining that power for your goals. So when you have somebody fighting against some kind of supremacy of certain people, they are trying to gain the power socially by moving together, using their power and references and internal understanding. So imagine if that group, like in the United States, was the black group, and they grew more and more identifying with their cause and wanting to get through with that. And opposing them were the white groups who did not like the idea that these slave daughters and sons are wanting more piece of the cake of that society where they are a minority and they are the foreign group. That can come to a big clash, and that can be the antagonistic opposition that we can meet there. But many times it doesn't happen that way because somebody gives way to somebody else, or they try to find a compromise. That's what states and politics is all about. Or it can become civil war or an open war if these people start their own nation, like it happened after the civil war in the United States, or many times in Europe, where somebody, I don't like the king and the way he's doing it, I'm going to start a new kingdom. Oh, she's Catholic, we are Protestant, let's go somewhere else and start over, or topple her and get taken over the power. And so wherever you get two groups meeting, and to that extent that they can be antagonistic to each other and grow into big parties, unions, national state, governments, movements, they have something that gathers them, not just because they like each other. It can be a national idea. It can be an idea of egalitarian purposes. It can be something related to their ethnicity or religion or values or common ground they're fighting on. And that makes it difficult to create both loyalty and peace in that society where you have the groups wanting to dominate more and become the privileged, or take over from the privileged, or share them their privileges. That's what it was most of the times about. Oh, you've got a lot of privileges here, but we are also in this country. We want to have a share in it that is fair and acceptable. Oh, no, you can't, because you are not the majority, you're just a minority. And by the way, your values and ways of thinking and eating and doing do not comprehend our ways. And you are not socialized in the ways that we are, and you will never be. And beside the way, we have also measured the skulls of people, and we found that we have the best and better IQ. And by the way, those who are blue-eyed and light skinned, they are the best race in the world, no doubt about that. The best bodies, the best health, and so on. And the others will laugh at that, saying, oh yeah, that's why you have a lot of Mongols and ADHD people and people suffering of all kind of diseases. Yeah. But what about the body? We have more stronger bodies. That was the sports, the fight over sports. I remember this lady from Greenland. She was secretary in the school, and it was the VM in football. And you know, the teams of each nation are competing to win the golden football match to become the world number one. And France came to the finals, and so she started like wanting to watch, because she hasn't really been watching. And so she said the next day when I met her, so she said, really, I don't know what this African team, they won. I don't know where they came from. And she said, there is no African team who was in the who came in the finals. She had this very, very convinced idea that the people she was watching yesterday playing against Spain or Germany or something, they were African, and France didn't make it. And we laughed, and we could see that she had confused the French team because of the many African original or African people in the group. And so you see, the world is shocked upside down in her head. And so it can be many times in groups when our references and the way we see things change, and they change very radically. Like yesterday, like 50 years ago, a black couldn't marry a white without big trouble, and today we see many of double-colored kids. And so, oh, what's going on? What happened? It can be a shock, especially if it happens too quickly. And so it goes all the way whenever groups they meet. It's not always a good ending that comes out of this. Sometimes suppression becomes the way to to protect that group and its interests and its ideas and values. And it can lash out in what is called xenophobia, or the fear of the unknown stranger. And so a very important sociologist and thinker called Theodor Adorno had been looking into that, analyzing what happened in Germany in the last century, in the 30s, and how these people took power. And he could see they were building on that idea of the stranger who is not welcome, the small groups in the ghettos, those small wicked-nosed Jews who are actually much dangerous and powerful, and the homosexuals, the Romas, any group they could point out, especially the Jews were maybe more visible at that point. But they could point out to make them the opposition, the antagonist group, the group of those foreigners who will destroy our society and take over. Today it's basically the Islamophobia, the fear of the Muslims, because every time people see them, it's like, oh, these are the dangerous people who are going to blow me up and take my things. And it happened to me when I came to Greenland. I had this friend of mine, who we became friends, a school teacher with a long tail in his head, and he looked like the old Indians, chiefs, and I liked him a lot. Very quiet and very easygoing, and speaks in good ways. And so we had some walks and talks, and then he told me once when we became good friends, he said, you know, when you came here, my mom were really scared, and she said, take care and watch out, and and he could maybe blow you up or something, just because she had heard I had a Muslim background and I had a kind of political activist background before. She was so scared without knowing. She had this typification. She has already judged who I am from what she thinks she knows about my group and about my values. And that's important for the groups to make themselves significant. And people can be using it. And it's really used a lot in our days, and in many days, and all maybe through all time in history. It happens to the Israelites under the Egyptians, and it happened to the minorities of what do you call them in the Persian Empire. Um, I can't remember the names. Anyhow, it's happening all the time that you use the the opposition, the fear of people and what they're gonna do if they get power or they are included or so on, to keep your power and to keep the people around you in control. And so you use the people, and the more you get of people around, you know, today it's called big masses, black masses. It's really millions and millions of people you have to convince and keep on track. And that's why the mass media has to always be doing that work if they want things to go. They cannot talk like I'm doing now and this book is doing. They cannot make people aware of, oh, really, is it just our typification? Are they actually humans? And so we're back to that dehumanization process. So this is what Theodor Adorno tried to look into and saw as the authoritarian personality. And it was always the drums of fear, uncertainty, and the fear of the stranger because of the changes that had happened. Well, you have to blame someone, as they say, and you have to find the thing you have to fight. You cannot just fight the ghost. You have to give people something to gather around against something else. And so that's what happens when the groups goes out of their way to stay privileged and to have their significant power. And that's why Pierre Bourdieu, when he studied these things on another level, he studied it also on how people can empower themselves and can become integrated and somehow get that symbolic resources back from society or be part of it. Like with me, I'm going to talk about Pierre Bourdieu in another talk, but he's basically distinguishing between what's called the orthodox and the Keteran strategies. It means people who are sticking to what we know, traditions, rules, ideas that is confirmed and established, and the Keteran, people who start something new or go new ways. And they can be part of society. They don't need to be African or Jewish or Muslims or people you fear. It can be the same people. It can be the same African nation you come from, the Asian country you are from. People start new ways of dealing with things. And that idea of the established and outsiders were part of Norbert Elias's theory and studies into how they affect each other and how they are a challenge for the established way of life. And that's also something they will return to. So you have just to think of it as the established and the outsiders, and the clash that could very easily arouse between them because of the labels and the pre-figured out typifications about who they are. Lastly, we have it's like us and them, and we have the majority and minority built on maybe racism, culturalism, religious ideas, whatever it is. It's always these things that's going on in society. And so finally, we have to take into account Gregory Bateson, who have been looking into this and say, well, whatever happens, there is a kind of symmetric and anti-symmetric schismogenies, and that means breakup or cracks. And these can be symmetric and asymmetric. What does that mean? Well, the symmetric ones is like both sides makes it impossible, because every time one group or person one group is trying to put themselves above the other group will react and say, hey, we belong here as well as you, and we have just as much right to this and that, and so they cannot put them out of power. And so that stays symmetrical, and that can really blow things up. That's why civil wars starts, or maybe political wars, when you have two parties that are just equally strong and always keeping them both into a kind of this kind of going and coming in that kind of dimension. And then you have these asymmetrical ways of schizomegenes. The breaks up are asymmetrical, and that's where you get the solution, mostly, that those with more power and privilege, they get to dominate how things are, and the others are suppressed or pulled back, or just have to accept things as they are, or move totally away from them and go be somewhere else. Yeah, that was part one. The second talk on how groups interact as groups with each other, discriminate, have prefixed ideas, and how we can see the strangers, and how we start looking at people as strangers, even though we all belong to the same humanity with different cultures. But we need it, not necessarily need it, but it happens because of privilege, reference groups, ideas and values, control, and so maybe and hopefully it made things more clear for anyone out there, that they can see through what's going on behind the lines when we attack or fear somebody. It's not always because they are evil. As they say, people are seldomly evil. It's mostly because they have a set of rules and way of life, or maybe just the looks of them makes you not wanting them. And it's going on all the time, and I'm not putting myself free of that just because I'm a minority right now in Denmark. I've also, in my old home country in Lebanon, felt as a majority, and we had groups there that I thought, I don't want them here, or the way they behave is not acceptable, and so on. So I also have this, everyone has it, to identify him or herself with a kind of reference group of a kind. It doesn't mean we have to suppress each other or throw people out, or necessarily go and fight and do things that shouldn't be done. But that's what mostly happens, because the dynamics takes over, and maybe some people invest in bringing that fear and fight and misunderstanding so broad that the bridge Kwai is never going to stand, and you will never be able to pass over and make that deal and that understanding. Sometimes it happens, and it's depending on the state, the culture, the mentality. And that's why sociology, like psychology, can make us aware. And imagine a world where really many people are aware of these things, and they lose effect. If you are more and more aware of the dynamics, why your group is like this and the others are like that, and why the fight erupts, you can just start becoming more and more aware, and your awareness is not necessarily what makes your activities change, but it will make it look silly. Especially if many people start being aware of, okay, that's just a way to make us do things that we really didn't want, or the fight will erupt and so on, and we're going to suppress other people. Why not make space and make an understanding instead of doing so? And in the other group, that will be the same. Why do we try to dominate the others and reject them and refute them? Let's make space as much as we can and get along. And that would be a global village, really, truly, of many cultures, subcultures, understandings that try to relate, trade, interact, but without these symmetrical, antagonistic ideas. And hopefully now you caught some of these words as well. I don't know who you are. I hope someone is there and is getting the benefit of this. Anyhow, I'm really filled up with power and energy by giving these talks, even though nobody is listening. That's a shame, because I know I'm good at it and I can give good explanations. So that's why I hope somebody is getting the benefit of this somewhere out there. But anyhow, by catching up on these phrases and words, maybe you become more and more aware of how things are working and how they are applied in real life in society.